Okay, yeah. So Todd's preaching over there. If you didn't get a chance to go to the 9:30 service, you should definitely listen to it later because it was really good. And actually, he talked about a lot of the stuff we'll talk about this morning. So if you'd rather hear from Todd than me or the video we'll watch today, he crushed it this morning. So go give that a listen. So yeah, we'll be listening to. Well, I'm Noah. First of all, I guess I should have started there. Let's see. I've been friends with Todd for quite a while. I worked here at GBC for a couple of years a little while ago, and him and I shared an office. So we've been close for a while, and I've talked through a lot of this stuff with Todd over the years because this is all he talks about. So, we
Talk that.
yeah, Todd has taken me under his wing to teach me everything he knows, I guess. So he trusts me enough to at least lead this morning. But we're watching a video, so I'm really not doing any teaching. So the video we'll watch is, his name is Lane. We probably have watched little clips from him before or something. I'm not positive we have or not, but he's one of Todd's mentors. He has a church in Pennsylvania, I think. And they crush missions at that church. Like this is their thing. Like they are very much taking their time and their resources to like train, equip their congregation to do this. They're sending out missionaries, all of this. So they're a great resource for us, and he's one of Todd's like actual mentors that he meets with and stuff. So he's an awesome guy. So we'll watch a video of one of Lane's like classes. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. We're not watching an hour and 20 minutes. We're gonna catch like the last 25-ish minutes of that training. So we'll miss the whole beginning part. But I'll give you guys this, just because he might reference it in the spot that we're talking about. I'm not sure. But this is like the packet that they are working through as he's talking. We'll be at the very end of this packet because we're going to be at the end of the video. But I did want to mention kind of where he's jumping into the video at. To give us a little bit of context. So the video is cultivating a go posture. So he kind of talks in the beginning about being led by the Holy Spirit through all of this. So obviously, I wish we had time to like start there. But Todd's kind of been, I feel like, setting us up for all of this for a while now. So, and then leading by example, and then you'll see a chart. If there's one thing on here I'd encourage you to look at some point is page 3, there's a chart there. And this chart is kind of really the things that he's saying you should be sharing with people, to share the gospel with them. And he really focuses in on like, you need to start here in box 1, talking about that there is a God. And if they aren't there yet, then it doesn't really make sense to move forward because they don't even believe there's a God. So how are they going to believe that God came down, became a man, and died for their sins if they don't even believe a God exists? I'd actually personally push back on him a little bit of like, it's okay to keep moving through the gospel, but I think his main point is really when he's saying all that, because he might reference it again in the video, I can't remember, is that you need to like not just, he'll say shotgun blast people with the gospel. Like don't just give them the gospel and then like, all right, well, I'm gonna wipe my hands clean of that. Like my job here is done. I gave them the gospel and now I'm gonna move on. His real point is like, you should be building relationships with them and knowing where they're at and talking with them with where they're at. So if they're hung up on the fact that there is no God, then that should be one of the key things that you're actually talking about with them, not just saying, I know how to give this specific tract or to say these very specific things in this order and that's all I know how to do. He's saying you should really be like tailoring the gospel to them. So that would be my only pushback, but I don't even think that's necessarily what he means. He just means to like really listen. So it's a pretty good chart though. Like you have the gospel principle here that he's talking about. So like God exists, there's scripture there. The principles that you're trying to like explain to them in that part of sharing the gospel with them. And then this last column is like the most practical part. It has like even like questions you can be asking people to kind of get into this conversation with them, which I thought was pretty helpful to think about And then even just like actions, like what you should be doing with them in this stage. Like if you see in the first box, it's all about like really building friendship as the actions, like just like actually hanging out with them, getting to know them and getting to know what they believe about God. So cool chart. We're not going to watch that part of the video, but you have the chart now so you can look through it. Or I'm sure Todd will give us the link to this video when he usually sends that stuff out later. If you want to go back and watch the first 3/4 of this video and look over that. But so we'll be jumping into the end, the leveraging me and we. But before we get into the video, I wanted to give us a chance to just chat, to kind of set this video up. Let's start by talking with people around us. I think that can be more helpful sometimes than having a large conversation. So let's take like 5 to 8 minutes to just chat through these. No specific order, whichever ones you feel like talking about with your neighbor. Let's talk about these really quick, just how we view this. And in the video, he's gonna reference your missional community a lot. So that's one for sure I'd like to see you chat with your neighbor about for a second, just to kind of set up, because we're jumping into the end of the video and he's been referencing this missional community through the whole video. And he's never really explains it in the video either, because it's just a thing their church does, but he'll continue to do that. So wrap your mind a little bit around what a missional community is. So let's chat for just like a little bit and then I'll bring us back together. We'll watch some of the video and then we'll chat some more. Cool. I'm gonna join you guys.
I pray for more missional community because I teach and I help here and I do reading intervention at Washtenaw Christian School, so I'm very isolated. Tried to have some gatherings with neighbors, but that really didn't go too well.
Neighbors, believing neighbors, or
Just invited all the women over to backyard brunches. So yeah, I need to find people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of a lot of it for me. Number two, what makes it hard to live missionally? I feel like so many people in Western culture have heard the gospel or had a chance to hear it and have had their decision made about it. So I know that's not ultimately true, and I have to remind myself that even if they have heard it, that doesn't mean that God can't work through the Spirit in our conversation. And I think more importantly, probably through our relationship. It's not just shotgunning them without having any kind of connection to them, but getting to know them and then being able to bring in the gospel.
That's what I was doing with neighbors.
Yeah.
Not coming over to preach, but coming over to get to know each other.
Yeah. And then as Todd said, number 5, to then be able to bring the gospel in, because that is required.
I have plenty of opportunities to scratch the surface with people like my golf outs, right? Get people to come and do something, but it's the discipleship making part's probably lacking. It's like, okay, you get these people together, then you don't do anything with them, right? It's kind of, you get to this point and it's kind of, well, here comes the next thing. You know, you just kind of just keep moving. It's more about, it's you're reaching with the gospel or you're making disciples. That's
I think when I think of like what makes living missionally hard for me is the like sacrifice of time. Like I think it's really hard for me to sacrifice time with my family, and like to the point where I think at times I think my kids can be, I guess, kind of like an idol. Just like any chance I have to like be with them, I'm taking advantage of, which is in some ways good, but like I think when it becomes like the only, like I'm not willing to give up any of that time, I think, I don't know, that's actually really hard for me.
as your kids grow older, like we used to do Awana, it's reaching boys and girls with the gospel, right? And then, you should be building disciples with your leaders and directors. If you're in a leadership role, as your kids do that, you can say, well, it's like one year I picked all the good kids from a certain school system, and Lynn goes, you might be the only good positive influence in these other kids' lives. I'm like, I just want to teach baseball. I don't want to be a influence in their lives. I just want to coach baseball. But you will have opportunities for your kids to reach them, and then it's just, your stage of life will change, and you can pick your ministries. And how do you? It's like Tyson always used to say when he go to a soccer match, he didn't want to tell the other parents what he did for a living, right? He just wanted to be the friend, and then, oh, that's what you do for a living. Oh, I'm a pastor of a church, and then you can have opportunities, but it's just your kids can be a way to
Yeah.
Are your kids all preschool age?
Yes, yeah, right now. We were just actually thinking about this because we were invited to a birthday party, and it's the same day as another birthday party, and it's back to back, and it's during nap time, but it's people who were like, we have no idea if they're believers or not. So we're thinking like, we really don't want to go to this birthday party. And we actually almost said no, like we can't. And we're like, let's just do it. Let's just go to the birthday party. It's an opportunity to love on these folks and maybe have a chance to move in that direction. But
Yeah, it's great. It's all about being intentional.
Yeah, and I often think that sinking feeling of we shouldn't or I don't want to, I think is a good key indicator that you should, because that's probably Satan trying to say don't, because there's probably fruit to be had there.
yeah,
And there's a lot of young parents who they were introduced to Christianity growing up, and then as they get older, they get away from it. And then they start having kids who want, we should probably go to church, right? And then you may get people who seek and get back into the ministry because they realize, oh, where do you guys go to church at, right?
Talking about
Oh, you should come to our church. Oh, we got this great new building, and then get them into a small group, and then start discipling. It's just where you start sometimes. Kids is a vehicle to. Like if you go on a mission trip, kids are so honest, right? And more outgoing. And Daddy, they don't know Jesus.
Yeah, they ask the good questions, that's for sure.
that worries me because my daughter is 4 and my brother is not a believer. And we see that, I'm like, what is my daughter gonna say to my brother? Like this could get real awkward real fast, which is good, but also scary for me. Like I'm like, this could get really interesting. So
But even as your kids age and being able to invite them to Awana, our son did a track camp one summer. He was upper elementary, and he met a person there, and we ended up inviting him to Awana. And then his mom came, and she got saved and got very involved in the church. So you just don't discount what hard times sometimes adults are going through, which may make them more interested during different seasons.
yeah.
Kim Brown, you remember?
Yes, I do.
For some reason that name sounds familiar to me.
She went here for many years.
My mission field, my most difficult mission field is with my kids and their spouses and the Grahams. All 3 of my children accepted Christ, and all 3 have walked away. And while it breaks this mama's heart, I just have to keep praying for them and planting seeds. Like I was watching we call them the 3 littles. So I have 6 Grahams, and the 3 youngest are 7, 5, 3. And I was talking to the 7-year-old Friday night when I was babysitting. I don't understand why, my son won't take me out for dinner for Valentine's. He takes his wife. But Harper mentioned Easter. And I said, oh, Harper, do you remember when you came to my church for Easter? Yeah. I said, do you know what Easter is all about? Jesus. Yes, you're right. And do you know he died, didn't he? I said, yes. He died, but he died. Do you know who he died for? Everyone? She said, yes. For you, and for Ava, and for Nash, and for me, and for your mommy and daddy. She goes, he died on a cross, didn't he? Yes, but you know, that's not the best part. He didn't stay dead. He said, And then we went on to talk about something else. So I just so appreciate those glimpses of, I don't know, I think the Holy Spirit gives me hope through those exchanges.
Yeah.
And yeah, when we were in Cuba, the mission trip was easy. It was easy. These people knew why we were there. We were going to give them a water filter, and they knew we were also going to talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And share the gospel.
They're very teed up.
I think being missional in my neighborhood is also, it's easy. Like I just said, when Todd was preaching, I sent my next door neighbor who's elderly a text. I was like, Carol, I had to get to church early today. I will clear the driveway and the sidewalks when I get home. You know, it's easy with people outside of my immediate family.
Well, the fear of rejection is no big deal. Fear of rejection in the kids.
Or pushing them away. It's no
Which I have. I have offended unknowingly. Like what? What? I had no idea. But yeah, my mission field at work is easy. I hid nothing. I just got back from a mission trip to Cuba. Really cool.
Yeah. That tees you up as well. All right, I hate to cut you guys off, but for the sake of time, we will press on to the video. So yeah, maybe kind of pay attention to what he's talking about with that missional community as he's talking, because I think it's kind of actually a big deal. But so we'll jump in. Like I said, he's coming off of just having shared kind of like how to. Hold on, let me look up what time to start it. He's coming off just sharing like kind of like how to share the gospel, which is in that packet. I'll give you one, Nance, in a minute. But kind of how to share the gospel, and now he's just stepping into that me and we. Okay, good. All right. Hopefully the audio's coming through the laptop, so that's fun. Sorry. I guess maybe talk for another minute, finish your conversation, and let me figure this out real quick, because that's not going to be even close to being loud enough.
You can be like, I feel the same way. It's like,
especially like now with that wrong with your
I know, yeah, and sometimes it's because
surrounded by, which I think
oh yeah,
sometimes,
busy, like don't just want to get through these.
yeah, it's hard because it's like,
such a good thing. Like,
Sometimes it feels
yeah,
like
it's a good thing, and you also know
It's
that I can
hard
pursue
to
the new,
from,
like I can grow in my pursuit of Christian
not really kind
of like developing deeper relationships.
Okay.
Just point out is towards Christ.
yeah.
But then it's like, okay,
and it's like
I can do that, and I can also seek out other relationships. But it's hard to know, like, okay, how do I?
All right, I'll cut you back off. We'll discuss some more after the video. So we won't even take this quite to the end. I'll probably cut it off a couple minutes short. But so he'll jump in with the me and we about having this go posture.
And that's where we'll try to
Is that good volume?
do some of this. Leveraging me and we. Let's see if I can get done early. Leveraging me and we. There are two things involved when we talk about modeling and going. All right? And living the gospel, living the mission of God in the context of my missional community. There's two things that happen in there that you need to be clear about and model and live for them. Demonstrating that to them and leading them into this thing is the reality that these two things exist in evangelism. there's a me component to it, and there's a we component to evangelism. I think a lot of the ones in the past have been exclusively me. I'm going to teach you up with all the right answers to diffuse any possible objection. Go get them, Tiger. Go hand out your little fake dollar bills. Get people saved. Go get them, right? And it's me doing that versus, wait, no, there is me, but there's we as well. Thinking this through as we do it. Committing to this, the essential components of building a meaningful friendship with someone. Committing to this, to the actions necessary for building friendship. That as you really look at how I do this personally and with someone else, it begins with me, in this scenario, you being personally committed to the actions necessary for building friendship with people who aren't saved. And you know what those two are? Write them down. Let them wake you up at night in your sleep. Time and sacrifice. Time and sacrifice. And more time and more sacrifice. Unending time and sacrifice. And then if they meet Jesus and they're saved, more time and more sacrifice. And I thought they just skyrocket from, no, this is right. I mean, we're hoping it's up, but man, there's so much bump in the road along the way. And who exerts the sacrifice and gives the time to step them through that? You've got to model that for your community, that you are committed to those things. Why would we assume that they would if they've never seen a model of that in you? What do? Commonly, we get up the guts, we give the little bit of Jesus that we can. I'm off the hook. I did it. I presented the gospel. Let's just pray for them that marinates and works itself out. And we kind of accept that in the Christian community, that's it. Versus if it's a crock pot and it takes time, and that's not going to happen as you just described, that it's going to take a slow process of building in and working through and dealing with these issues of doubt and question and presenting the truth to them, that I'm going to need to be committed to the time and sacrifice necessary. Me. Not telling my group to be committed. I've got to lead in being committed to that. I've got to be faithful in these things. I've got to show them what it means to build this kind of friendship with a lost person. Man. Listen, not just time and sacrifice. I mean, not just sacrifice. Sacrifice what? Can I tell you this now? Full disclosure. Sacrificing your emotions. Sacrificing the emotion of dealing with their rejection. Sacrificing your emotion of them just saying, screw you, I don't want anything to do with this. And I've been trying, and I've been reaching out, and I know I'm flawed, I'm not perfect, but I've been making these, and I'm just not getting anything in return. Sacrifice. Remember Jesus standing outside of Jerusalem, man, that I would gather you under my wings as a hen does with her chicks, but you weren't willing. That's his chosen people he's speaking to. And he had but a small chorus of people accepting him. And what does he do, though? He walks the road to the cross. He doesn't quit. He doesn't give up. He's faithful to the mission of God. It's a parallel for us. When we step into going and leading in mission, we will be burned. We will be emotionally drained. We will be in places of lack. Hard, difficult, right? Super hard. Watching people make destructive choices to not accept this revelation of who God is to them and how he wants to save them. That's taxing. It's much easier to shotgun blast at the door. I don't even know their name. But when I learn of them and I begin a friendship and I start to know their kids. Oh, and I even go and watch their sporting events and I cheer for their kids. Right? And then and I start to learn of their extended family. And I'm invested emotionally. It's a risk we take. But we've got to be, the me of us has to be committed to that. That's not everyone else's responsibility. That's mine to be faithful to those things. And lead others who, quite honestly, guys, as you know, there's many in your missional community who they want a very segmented involvement in these things. Can I come when you seal the deal? That'd be great. Maybe I'll tell them my testimony and they get saved and we can all celebrate. I would love to come at that part. But this long road crockpot deal, I don't want it. I think it is a crackpot. I don't want it. What are we leading? Are you personally committed to those actions that are necessary? Dig deeper, be interested in their lives, invest in them, no matter the time, no matter the sacrifice. Huge testimony and motivator to those growing young believers in your group who are scared to death at the notion of doing it. Huge testimony to them. It does. It speaks volumes. That being said, do not use your missional community as your relational crutch or create a culture in your missional community that hampers meaningful friendships with the lost. Don't allow that to become that. Don't allow it. Don't allow the culture of your group to be so introspective that you're not leading them to lift their eyes into the fields that are ready for harvest. That's on us to do that. We can't allow it to become my relational crush. I got so much in here, and this is literally beginning to sap the emotional and spiritual life out of me because I'm not able to leverage the truth into their lives and show them what it means to work through this as we get our eyes off ourselves and onto those that are far from Jesus. We've got to be focused on them and lead them into that. But we as leaders can allow it to become like this, the holy huddle that becomes an iron curtain to ever considering the life of the lost. Fight for that. Don't allow that to take place. That's on us. Because if we, again, the path of least resistance, it will come in tighter and tighter and tighter. We're preparing for the zombie apocalypse in here, right? That's what we're doing. Don't let any naughty in. Don't go out where the naughty is either. Fight it, fight it, fight it. Man, uncomfortable. Nope, we're not going to be there. Nope, we're shaking it up. Nope, we're changing things. Why? So you can see what it means to get out there and to pursue people who are going to hell. We're not. They are. Let's get out there to them. That's the me component of these things. Me. But not just that. How do we look for ways to incorporate our MC friends in the process? So let me just throw out a few things. It's not just me. I think what God is saying is to lead is to show them what it means to be faithful. Whether some of these people in your missional community fall off and don't see it through, we need to be the ones that see it through. For the sake of the lost and for the sake of the mission of Jesus Christ, right? We got to be faithful to that. But that doesn't mean it's at the exclusion of those in our community. We got to look for ways to leverage the truth that God has given us about that. John 13, John 17, right? That they'll know that you sent me, Father, by their love for themselves? No, for one another. So how do we leverage those things and bring our missional community into the process? How do we practically do follow me as I follow Christ, right? A couple things. Patience and discernment. Patience and discernment. Think in terms of how many missional community friends to include if you're going to hang out with some of your unbelieving friends. And also consider who in your missional community might be best to relate to that individual. Nothing wrong with this. Sometimes you just go, every time we're going to do every interaction with an unbeliever, everybody's welcome. Think about that for a second. Our missional community has like 40 people. That might be a bit weird for an unbeliever to come to a hangout with our crazed, we've got kids, lots of them. There's like tackling going on, food flying. Come on in. It'll be really easy for you to fit into this, right? It's not very wise and discerning. That might not be the best way initially to start some of that we-ness to this process. How do we make the we be the best for that individual and for coaching these other ones? Don't bring everybody along. How could I help? Bill talks to Malachi and says, how about you and me? Let's do this. You know why that's really wise? Hopefully Hunter's going to come in and be exposed to all of them and build relationships with all of them. But initially, it's much less scary, challenging, awkward when there's just one other guy, right? For Hunter. But guess why else it's good? It's super great for Malachi. Because he can talk with Bill. Bill can talk with him and go, bro, let's think about this, how we're doing this, how we're building into his life, how we can, get some of these discussions into gospel-centered stuff. They can work that out together, and he can have much more impact on him and help him grow in this. So consider the number of people that you're going to invite to a certain thing with an unbelieving friend. You as the leader, think through that. Will there be people in your group that are mad that they're not included? Yes, there will. I can attest to that will happen. How do you help them understand? Here's why I didn't invite everybody. Because this guy and this guy has similar interests to this guy that I'm reaching out to. And they were able to engage in some really meaningful conversation about his life. They had a similar background and similar experience as him. And the conversation got very personal pretty quickly because he was able to relate to them. Oh, that kind of helps the guy who feels left out understand. It's not about me being involved in it per se. It's about that person meeting Christ. Consider who's involved. Consider how many. Be wise with that. Be wise. As you bring an unbelieving friend into the sphere of your missional community, here's a really important word to remember. Be normal. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have a hard time being normal sometimes. We got to get out of our little like missional community church bubble thing and look at it and go, how can we just be normal with these people that we're reaching out to? How could they come and be a part of something with a few of my missional community friends and it's normal? Man, come on in on our Sunday afternoon. We have a kumbaya circle. Everyone has a Bible and we share prayer requests. You'll love it. And they're still questioning whether God exists. Do you see? You get what I'm saying? I know this might sound basic, but sometimes in our excitement and urgency because we love those that we're in community with or whatever, we're like, come on, you'll love it, it's great. They don't believe God exists yet. They won't think this is great. Not yet. We trust God that they will, but let's take wise, discerning steps into that. Let's pull them into something that's much more normal for them, but still provides an opportunity for gospel conversations. You get what I'm saying? Examples. Hey, go out for wings with somebody. You know, if you got a buddy and he's big into that and likes football, this is a no-brainer. Hey, let's go get some wings on Monday night with a couple of my buddies. We'll watch the game and hang out. That's normal. He probably does that on his own time with other people as well. That's very non-threatening. It starts the process in a way that is real. Does that make sense? Think it through is what we're saying. Plan it out. Who might come? Who would be a good person to come to that and come along for that? Think those things through. All right? Be discerning also in when you consider to bring your unbelieving friend to your gatherings. We're not saying there's never a time to bring an unbeliever to one of your gathering times where you're studying the Bible together. We're not saying that. What we're saying is think through of when that timing might be best. If you've already had a long series of interactions with you and them and maybe a couple of your MC friends and them, and there's an openness to the things of God, maybe even a really strongly considering the gospel, who Jesus Christ is, and all of that. There's not an antagonistic nature there so much. It's like, we're not saying that wouldn't be a bad idea to have them come to a gathering if they wanted, if they found out and knew that you meet with more friends and they wanted to come. We're not saying that's, oh, don't do that, that's wrong. Think about it though. That's a very unique environment. We had someone in our missional community who's kind of got in our sphere, and to be honest, right now, we're not really even sure if he's a believer. It's a little bit up in the air. We want to believe that he is. He's super open to talking about stuff, but there was a long process of getting him to that place. A lot of game nights and all this stuff with a growing number of people from the missional community. A lot of different leveraging other relationships with this guy. And he was sort of piecing it together. Oh, wait, I kind of know a little bit about all you guys. And, oh, there's this similar thing. What is that similar thing? What is about that? I'm interested. Come. Hey, when's that group meeting? Because I'd like to come. What time is that again today? Oh, wow, he wants to just come now. All right, what do we do here? So he wasn't antagonistic. He was very open to talking about it, wanted to hear, wanted to see what this was about. We're not saying that's bad. That's not step one, though. Don't let missional community become what the old church evangelism model was, right? Go out there and invite your friends to church. A big room where people sit, like we used to in college, in an auditorium, watch one person monologue about the Bible. You'll love it. It'll be great. most of your friends at work are not going to want to go there for the first time, right? There's a better way to do this relationally in the model of Jesus. Okay, so think about this of how we look to incorporate our missional community friends. All right, we want to think about that thing. Let me give you some of that was practical suggestions. Let me just list some of these out for you to think about. Okay, what are we saying here? Just summarize this. This is getting to the end. Okay, I told you it'd be done a little early. I really meant it. Personally assume the primary role in reaching your friend. I think one thing that we've been talking about on the elder level and even in our missional community and other missional communities in our sphere that I'm hearing this discussion, we're kind of having this, is where there's a bit of a confusion that missional community means reaching the lost is the responsibility of the whole missional community to that one person all the time. No longer do I have any personal responsibility. It's just the whole group is reaching them. That sounds, at a level, we're saying that's true. Ultimately, we want them to be won over to the body of Christ. That is true. But the problem is we're introducing that at the very beginning, and no one really takes personal responsibility for, this is my friend, my neighbor, and I got to be the catalyst in seeing this through for their life, and I want to have my missional community be a part of it. But man, if no one takes the bull by the horns here, the bull runs wild. Right? So what we're saying is, do we want the missional community to be a part of it? Absolutely. You're using them, bad word, but we're going to use it anyways. We're using them for help, ideas, prayer, and involvement, but you take the responsibility of that. My neighbor across the street who lives right across the street from me, I don't sit there and go, Matt, when are you going to get over there and reach them? Because it's all about the missional community doing it. He's like, bro, I live on a street. I got people on my street that need Jesus. Like I got to be committed to those ones that live next to me. And how can I help him over there where he lives? And how can he help me where I live? But it's not his responsibility. They're my neighbor. I see them every day when I drive home. Do you get what I'm saying here? This helps that we think this through and model this for those in our missional community. We have people in ours right now who are still growing into this realization. And they feel like they're on mission because they're in a missional community who's reaching people, yet they themselves aren't doing anything yet. Do you get what I'm saying? It's a faulty understanding that has led to some apathy that we don't want to model well. We want to show them we take this responsibility ourselves as leaders. We want to reach people, okay? Think about these things. These are norms. These are not absolutes, what I'm telling you. They're normative things to consider. Do not immediately invite your friend to your missional community gathering. That's a norm. It's not an absolute. Okay? Normally, don't do that right away to your gathering. I'm not saying something where you're doing something that's normal life with friends from your missional community. But the gathering in the Kumbaya circle probably shouldn't be the first thing that you invite them to. That's going to be problematic. It's going to be hard to understand for them, and even more difficult for you later to try to break down some of the faulty assumptions that they're going to have from that. Do not immediately invite your friend to a large social gathering of those in your MC. Normative, not absolute. Normative. Why? Have you ever been in a group with 30 people who all know each other and you're the only one who doesn't know anyone? They're having a great time. You are hanging out at the punch bowl. Are you with me? And you're literally, it's extremely difficult, and you're literally, who's that one person I know? And you find yourself awkwardly hovering around them because you don't know anybody else. It's very hard. Very few people can just step into big group gatherings of everyone knowing each other, and they don't, and they just kind of like, what's up? That guy that I'm telling you about kind of does that. He's a special guy. Like he doesn't know people. He's like, hey, so what are we playing? Okay, come on in. Like, whatever, you know? That's not normative. That's unique. So think ahead of time. These are principles, all right? When considering exposing your friend to those in your MC, plan well and consider how it might be most comfortable for them. Usually, normative, usually small group participating in very normal functions is best. Please, Mom, come help me. I've escaped. Think about these
I
things.
think he's
all right?
referencing a kid that walked
You
in.
don't like football. Start liking it. You don't play games. Start playing games. You don't like barbecue. What's wrong with you? But do it anyway. It's good. Believe me. Just going out and doing something normal. Go out and catch a drink with them somewhere or whatever. You know what? These kind of things that are normal for them. Step into leading into this and thinking about how you're bringing some of your MC friends along who are a little further back in the process of reaching out and making disciples. I don't think it has to be hard, guys, but I do think it needs some faithfulness and planning and thinking these things through as we move forward. It can be done. I am convinced that it can be done, especially when we are living and functioning in the first point that we made. When the Spirit of God is leading, when we're calling upon His grace and His wisdom as we walk through this. Is it always easy? No. I'm telling you that. I could give you a lot from our missional community experience. There's challenges as we've gone through this. Who should we have come, and when should we have them, and how many of us? Maybe just better for a couple of us. This guy's kind of a real private, personal guy. He doesn't really open up to anybody, you know. And we just had this with one of Matt and Sarah's friends, and us guys went out with him for wings a couple times. And he's pretty kind of private, closed, doesn't talk about it a lot. So we didn't just say, hey, all 15 guys in our group, let's go barrage this dude with wings, you know. It was just a couple. There's, 4 of us total, just to step into that and see if the door would be open. These things can happen, but we build and we move into those conversations, into those areas that we're going to need to see where they're at, question them, and figure out where they're at so that we can figure out how we can address that with the scriptures. Man, guys, we got to lead into this stuff. We've got to be faithful into these things. I've said Jack Squat about how to help your missional community do it, and that was all intentional. Seriously, it's all intentional. I think this is one of those things that the conviction has to come here, and we lead into this. Because if we're thinking we can talk at those who are still learning what this looks like, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. You picture in your mind.
So he goes into talking about, because he's really speaking to this group and he wants them to be like leaders within their missional community. In doing this, so he goes into an analogy about running a race with a baton, and you need to model for your group how to do this and then hand the baton off, and they will model for the people around them. So we're not going to get into all that. But we'll kind of start wrapping up here a little bit. So I think it became clear. I don't know, maybe it might have become a little more clear actually earlier in the video what he's talking about by missional community. So I'll just clarify if it wasn't clear. Missional community that he's talking about here is a group of believers that are on mission together to reach the unsaved. And so that is what he's talking about in this. Like I said, their church is super intentional with all this mission stuff. So he's not just talking even vaguely about a missional community. He's talking very specifically about your missional community, like you have one. So their church has like we have grace groups, they have missional communities. This is your missional community that you are on mission with. So we'll kind of close by talking through some of these discussion questions. This week kind of became a little more practical. Todd's done a great job of kind of setting up the why, and I know personally for myself, inspiring me to want to reach people, but I often in those conversations think like, Todd's like, there's all these unreached people groups who have no access to the gospel. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I live here in Ann Arbor. How much can I really do? And so now we're starting to get into that, like, okay, well, you are here in Ann Arbor right now. That is not to say you shouldn't maybe be one of the people that go to the unreached, but right now you're in Ann Arbor. So what does it look like to have this missional posture even as you're here in Ann Arbor? So again, let's just talk through some of these questions with the people around us. No specific order. I don't care which ones you get to or whatever. So we're just talking really more about the practicals of how do we live this out here in Ann Arbor. And then if we have time, maybe we'll share out as a whole group a little bit, and then we'll close there. So talk with those around you. Did Nance leave any of her stuff here? Or is that, she took everything? Okay. Well, if I see her again, I'll give her one of these, but.
Well, the one person I talked about that we invited the son to Awana, I knew she knitted because we would sit and watch this track thing. So she knitted, and this is several years ago, and I would love for this to happen again, but it just shows how God works and, the Holy Spirit's in it. I asked her to teach me to knit because if somebody knows something, they're always happy to get somebody else involved, right? I had no desire to learn to knit. But I thought, this is her thing, I'm going to do it, so we can get to know each other. So we went and bought this kit to knit this purse. So she taught me a few times. I got about this much done, and by then we kind of had a relationship. So I didn't knit anymore. I gave the kit to my mom, and she finished the purse for me. So, like they said, just find something somebody else does. And then, we invited her kid to Awana. Eventually, she came to church. But I would love for that to happen again.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think a lot of times, and if this works out, it's great to invite somebody into something that you already have an interest in, but I think a lot of times we don't want to sacrifice, like, I don't want to do that, that's lame,
Right,
but
I
like,
didn't either, but
it's
I was
like,
convicted,
yeah.
This is what I need to do.
And earlier in the video, he was talking about how, like, he knew somebody who was a runner, and so he's like, I guess I'm gonna be a runner, and so he started running, but yeah, I think that's pretty huge to step into those things, but hard sometimes, especially if it's something like running.
I think having a mission group would be great.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like grace groups are, I don't want to say discipleship more in that than it is.
Yeah, and he talked earlier in the video about the difference between a missional community and a Bible study, which a Bible study is great, but he was like, you sit there and you talk about the Bible, which is good for your own personal development, but there's often that doesn't translate into a let's go do this. It doesn't mean they have to be mutually exclusive, but I think it's nice to have even the intentional language of like, this is my missional community, because then you're all on that mission with each other, which I think can be pretty big.
And you don't even need to meet with your mission group as often. Just knowing you're there and that we all have the same intentional goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, and I think that's why Paul said.
Yeah, I think there is a danger, and I find myself slipping to this a little bit of when he's talking about like finding somebody who already has like interest with them, and I just want to kind of punt the responsibility to like, oh, those two both, like to run or whatever. So how about you take this? This is your responsibility now. I don't want nothing to do with it anymore. I think I often can slip into that if I try to like make those connections. Easy to kind of pass the ball.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about what you said and the time element of it, and the connection with people that you can leverage into it, but just having that be another thing. I know that sounds horrible to say, but I feel like in so many ways, the way our week is constructed, there's very few open time gaps for stuff. And often my wife is so good about saying, we need to be doing this for the people that we're trying to reach in our friend groups who are unsaved. We've got a couple of them that we've been working on for years. But then when it gets brought up again and again, and it's like, but we already have such a full schedule, and bringing other people into the fray to fill it even further fits her great. But for me, I'm like, man, I need just time, and I need to step out of that and realize that it is the sacrifice that he was talking about from the video, truly. If it's the second birthday party in the day. This happened 3 weeks ago where literally we had like 5 things in the weekend, and she's like, here's the gap. Can we hang out with them? And I was like, well, no. And she goes, well, I'm busy here, but can you do it with them? I was like, no. And so it didn't happen. But I think that sacrifice has to.
For me, I think like having the missional community sometimes can help with that, because it's like, whatever, I want to hang out with Todd. Well, I don't want to give up hanging out with Todd to go hang out with my neighbor, because like I enjoy hanging out with Todd, and I don't want to hang out with my neighbor. But if me and Todd are in a missional community together, then like maybe Todd and I can hang out with him. So I still kind of get to double dip. It's not the same, you know, of just hanging out with Todd, but like I get to double dip a little bit, hanging out with Todd and still trying to reach this person.
Yeah.
I ask God, say, how can we double dip, God? You know, I have this desire, and I want to do this thing. How can you bring non-Christians into this? And so we could, I think, if you ask him for help to double dip, where you could, like golf. Hey, how can we use golf as a tool to reach? Because we all like to play golf, and then you get more. How do you get your non-believer friends to play golf? And or how do you get your non-believers to play? I got one guy on my bowling team. I think he might come to church with me, and which is
So you just want the gusto.
well, I like to tie in what I like to do with.
Yeah.
It's like there's an opportunity to have a fishing thing, and it's back in my brain. It keeps coming up, but I'm attracted to other Christian fishermen. Right? It's like, oh, he's a Christian, so I can talk to him. It kind of justifies talking to him because he's Christian. Well, it does if you try to figure out how to talk to non-Christians, right? If you bring them in, or is it just us and no more, right? You know, it's kind of like merging your personal life with your family life, with your church life, and make that all one life, right? How do you incorporate all those things at one time?
Yeah. And how do you sacrifice when the person you're trying to save, the person God has put before you, is a person that isn't the easiest?
That's what I was thinking. Those are the hard ones.
The ones where you're like, man, you don't have it together. Bringing you around other MC friends or friends in general is tough. This is hard work
Yeah.
and really painstaking.
My golf outing.
You're a friend that you're a person I'd never be friends with otherwise.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
the ones. Those are the hard ones.
Yeah.
So my golf outing it went from 30s, 40s. I started bringing in Christian speakers. I'm in the 80s now, and it's like, is that because I asked? I had a speaker there, and introduced the gospel to all these people I've known for years. A lot of them not Christians. It's kind of like, And then I'm listening to Frank Tanana and Joe the electrician talk about Christianity. It was like we're sitting there and listening to Frank talk to Joe about who God is and the Creator and sin and like we're all like it's like this banter going on. But yeah, how do you make those things happen intentionally? You know, to me it was like a random act, but no, you create opportunities, and you don't have to be the person doing it. But if you create the opportunity to happen, then you gotta follow up.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying, right? Like
Yeah,
you can.
follow up. You could say, so what did you think about what Frank Tanana said?
But then you till the soil from there, or bring people
Yeah,
in to
you
help
gotta
them
do
out.
And I think there's times where the responsibility probably does get passed. If they become friends,
Yeah.
then like maybe that does become their person that they're responsible for reaching out to at this point. But sometimes that's not where it goes. But I do think like the sacrifice can become less if you find ways like golfing as a way to outreach. The sacrifice becomes not quite as much to have to reach other people, or like if it's somebody we don't like if we have people who are actually on mission with, and they make the sacrifice with us, you kind of bear that burden together. I think it makes it still a sacrifice, especially for the hard people, but maybe a little less painstaking when you at least are doing it with somebody who's on that same mission.
You have 2 non-Christians on your foursome. Once you get saved, you pick them off and get 2 more non-Christians on your foursome. It's like, well, you're saved now.
No, you got a discipleship.
Yeah, he said it's a time and sacrifice, and then once they become a believer, it becomes more time and sacrifice.
Yeah. Until they get really hooked in.
Yeah. All right, we're coming up on time, so I don't want to hold you guys too long. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of started the conversations going on what I think is a big aspect, that missional community stuff. So I'd encourage you guys to even keep thinking about that, like who is your missional community, and not just in your head who is your missional community, but actually having those conversations of like, hey, let's be a missional community. Because if you communicate that makes it easier to be like, hey, I have my neighbor Bob that loves wings, like he's talking about, whatever. Will you do that with me? Like I know I'm going to take responsibility. He's my neighbor, but will you step into that with me and help me reach Bob? And I think when we're intentional and have those actual missional communities, that's when you can start actually bringing people into the loop and start reaching them together. So yeah, we'll continue. I think next week is a panel, right? Is that next week?
Not even sure.
Not sure. I think we're going to continue next week on the local stuff. What does it look like to live missionally here in Ann Arbor? I think we're going to have a panel to kind of just bounce thoughts, ideas, all of that off of, and continue this conversation. So hopefully this was fruitful. I enjoyed our conversation, just kind of talking this through. So let me pray for us. We'll call it a week, and hopefully this isn't the end of the conversation. Dear Lord, we just thank you for who you are, that you are ultimately reaching the people around us, that you are drawing them to yourself, and we're thankful that you draw us in to be a part of that mission, Lord. Would you just help us to continue to think that through, to engage with you, God, and grow a relationship with you as we pursue the people around us, and rely on your Holy Spirit through it all. We love you, Lord. We praise you. Amen. Thanks, guys.
One other little plug, we do have a missions breakfast that we just got on the calendar for the 15th of March as well. So if you all are people who like to plan ahead, put that in your calendar, March 15. It'll be pretty similar where we have local partners as kind of a panel, but also some good breakfast. So hope to see some of you there.
Cool. I'm sure Todd will probably email us about that at some point.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and probably sprinkle it in